So one of the things we did in class to prepare for the midterm is go over the idea of replacements. So we have an FLA file here, which is the file you can download to open up, and there we go. It has a few too many frames in the timeline. We'll go over that in a second. Got a little button right here, the letter A on it, color green. Um, there is also a Swift file. So the Swift file is the thing that you export real quick to watch an animation. We used it with the witch and the drop shadows and things. You get this notice every time with Chrome. It's like, this is a harmful file. No, it's not. It's just a Swift file. So you say keep. And then I have a standalone Swift player. You may have to open it up through Flash to watch it. But there you have it. Just a little animation file. So, how are we going to do this? Well, first off, I want to show you a little bit of what's going on up here because we haven't done this yet. I set this up for you so that there was already frames in the timeline because we need to have that already in there in order to have there be change over time. We will get to how to add these in after the midterm. But if you grab this right here, I think it's blue on the computers at the school, but it's red on mine if your version's older, and this is your time marker. And so you drag it through and you can see the seconds changing here and the frames changing here. So this is all of the various frames that play in the animation. Think frames of film, like picture a film reel running through a projector. That's what these are. And the more of them you have, the more time you have. So technically we have 10 frames for 0.4 seconds worth. Don't worry, we'll make it slower. And right now it's exactly the same on every frame, which is on purpose because I'm going to show you how to swap out one symbol for the other. But first up, we have to remind ourselves what's going on with symbols. We have to remind ourselves what is happening, and that requires going into the library. That's the one that looks like these. If you can't find it there, it's Window Library. And right now there's just one that says the letter A. And you'll remember that if I double click here or here, it goes into the symbol. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. I'm actually going to grab my library. I'm just going to drag that tab up to there. Nope. I want it down here. Yes. Wherever that blue bar is where it's going to land. And I'm doing that so we can see the library at the same time as this and it doesn't keep vanishing. So we have the letter A here, and depending on your computer, you may need to change this typeface. I'm noticing that a lot of computers don't have Kalinga. I didn't think it was special, but apparently it is. So you can go into here and you can just, change it to whatever you want and it'll update. Undo. There we go. But you can also change the color if you want to, right? So when you're in the symbol, you can make changes to all of the different things, and that includes changing the color. I can also just go in here and I can, I want to go back to the green because the green is like, if I want to keep that same saturation and lightness, I just go directly to this and then I can change this color here. That's a cool color. It's a little bit much. So I've got the letter A, right? But I changed it in there and it changes it for all of them. It doesn't matter where you change it, it's going to change it for all of them. So if I want the letter B to show up, I need a new symbol. And the best way to get that is to actually right click on the symbol that already exists and say duplicate. This will make a copy of this one. We're going to call it B, right? Hit OK. Now here's the trick. Right now they look identical, right? This is their previews. So you need to be very careful. You need to make sure you're selecting the one that says B and that that's the one you're double clicking on. How do you know you're in there? What does it say over here? Does it say B or does it say A? Right? This was one of the things we need to watch out for in class. So I can come in here and to change text, you double click it, which opens up like a text box, and I can delete the letter A and put in the letter B. And I can also select this color, and I can go here to my color picker, and I can say, all right, that one was like fuchsia, now this one's going to be a ridiculous shade of purple. Something like that. All right, these still all say A, but now you have an A and a B. And so the idea is to right click on B, duplicate, call it the letter C, and so on and so forth. By the way, when you double click on the word that's the name of it, you just change the name of the symbol. But if you double click on this little gearbox next to it, that will actually bring you into the symbol. So one of the things we're trying to get used to is just how to navigate these things. Ooh, that's not centered at all. And how to work our way in and out of these symbols, because we want you to get used to doing this. There we go. Blue. And you can also see how these are lining up on here. Right click, duplicate, call it the letter D. Okay. Now I'm still in the letter C. I didn't back out before, so I have to make sure I double click on this one. There we go. And it says D here. It doesn't look like anything changes. That's what's weird. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you double click on that type box to use it, and then I change the letter and I click off somewhere, look at my cursor. It's still a text cursor. So you need to go back to your general selection cursor. Otherwise, you're going to accidentally put a bunch of type boxes everywhere. All right, so I'm going through letter D, and through some pausing magic, I am able to, in the blink of an eye, create the rest of the letters so you don't have to watch me doing it. So go ahead and pause and create the rest of the letters. But you should have A, B, C, D, F, G, etc. And then there's a bunch of frames over here. So whenever we do animation in basically any program, you set your time marker to where it needs to be first, then you make your changes here. So I want the first one to say A. So then I go to the second one. Now, how do I make this say B? Well, yes, I can drag this off and then kind of cover this up and hope it snaps and then blah, blah, blah. But no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have two different things on that layer. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want that to happen. But I still want them to be in the exact same location. How do I do that? Right click, swap symbol. And you can swap out one symbol for the other. And then I move forward by one frame. So I go to frame 3. And this goes back to A because this keyframe was already set up. All of these keyframes are set up to be the letter A until you change that. If I change it like this, then that's going to be what changes. It's not what I want to change though. So I can swap out the symbol and it gives you a preview of what your symbol is in there. And so you can pretty quickly go through and change out these symbols. You can swap out the symbol, let's see, E, like that. And the result will be that you have a whole bunch of symbols occupying the same place, but they look different. That's the dream. There are a few extras at the end. You can right click, remove frames. Select those last two, right click, remove frames. See, you're animating already. Now, in order to watch this, you would hit Control Enter on the keyboard. And then this would happen because we're going too fast. So there are ways to stretch these frames out. We're going to get to that later. So we're going to kind of cheat. And right up here in the timeline, it says 24 FPS. Yours might say 30, depending on what computer you're on. So that's the default frame rate. The frame rate is how many frames per second get played. And this one is 24 frames a second. That's a lot of frames a second. Standard for animation, standard for American film. BBC television is 25 frames a second, I think. Video, like cheap video, is 30 frames a second. Video games have to play at 60 or 120 frames a second because you're moving around so much, otherwise there'd be blur. There's a lot of different reasons why frame rates change, but film is usually in 24. However, we're going to set this to something like 8 and see if that slows it down enough. And we're going to hit Control Enter. That's all right. Well, no, I'm going to go down to 5. Again, this is not normally how we slow things down. Do not do this with your final. Please, 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 please. Do not do this with any of your real animation. But by slowing it down to 5 frames a second, that means that our 7 frames now equals 1.2 seconds, right? Because you can only get through 5 of them in the first second. So that's how frame rate works. Now, again, we usually set this up beforehand, and then you got to stick with it no matter what. but in this case we're cheating a little bit so that we can see our animation. So again, if you want to see it, run through the whole thing, Control Enter, and that is your replacements. So what do we use replacements for? Well, we can use them for almost anything. If I look at our characters from before, faces, different eyes, an eye that's open, an eye that's closed, different mouths. This is using animation for the eyes, so you don't have to use it. Using if a hand needs to be holding a sword versus open, right? You need to open up the fingers. You would replace it. You would not, you don't need to animate anything in the symbol, right? So replacements, being able to take things that are same size or similar size and shape and put them in the exact same location as was previous.